My name is David Ortega, and I have been a park ranger at Mount Shasta Trinity National Forest for 17 years. Before I tell you what happened on September 22nd, 2024, before I explain why I'm breaking the oath I signed in October of 2023, I need you to understand something. If you're planning to hike Mount Shasta, if you're one of those spiritual seekers drawn to this mountain because of its reputation, you need to hear this. What I'm about to tell you could save your life, or at least prepare you for what you might encounter above 9,500 feet. Are any of you watching from Northern California? Have you ever felt the pull of Mount Shasta, that strange magnetic feeling that draws people here from all over the world? There is a 23 square mile area on the northeast face of Mount Shasta between the 9,500-foot elevation marker and the Hotlam Glacier at 11,200 feet that does not appear on most topographic maps with full detail. The official USGS maps show the general terrain, but there are gaps, areas marked with unusual designations that most hikers never notice. Everyone who hikes this mountain should know what's really happening in the zone we call the Convergence, though that's not its official name. The official name is Sector 7 Shasta, and it's been designated as such since 1954. What I'm about to tell you goes against every regulation, every non-disclosure agreement, every directive I've received from the Department of Interior. But after what happened last month, after we lost 4 more people, after I learned the truth about what happened to my predecessor, Thomas Webb, in 1998, I can no longer remain silent. September 22nd, 2024. That's the date that changed everything for me, though the story really begins much earlier. I need to establish something before I continue. In my 17 years as a ranger, I've conducted over 300 search and rescue operations. I've pulled hypothermic climbers off the glacier at midnight, recovered bodies from crevasses, talked down suicidal jumpers from the summit rim, and dealt with everything from altitude sickness to bear attacks. I spent 4 years before this job with CAL FIRE as a wildland firefighter, and 3 years before that getting my degree in forestry and environmental science from Humboldt State. I am not someone prone to superstition or flights of fancy. I believe in evidence, in rational explanations, in the scientific method. Or at least, I did. The call came in at 2:47 p.m. on that September afternoon. A group of 4 hikers, experienced climbers from Portland, had failed to check in at their scheduled time. They'd filed a proper wilderness permit for a 3-day summit attempt via the Hotlam Ridge route, which is one of the more technical approaches. The group leader was Marcus Keller, age 34, a software engineer who'd summited Rainier twice and had done winter climbs in the Cascades. With him were Jennifer Ross, 29, his girlfriend, and an emergency room nurse. Then there was Paul Chen, 31, a physical therapist and experienced mountaineer who'd climbed in the Andes. The fourth was Sarah Whitmore, 27, a geology PhD student studying volcanic systems. All capable people, all properly equipped, all following correct protocols. Their permit showed they'd planned to camp at 9,800 feet on their first night, make a summit push on day 2, and descend on day 3. They were now 7 hours overdue for their first checkpoint call. Standard protocol says we give them until dark, account for possible equipment failure or simple delays. But something about this call bothered me immediately. Maybe it was the location of their planned camp. Maybe it was the date, September 22nd. I didn't realize the significance at the time. I grabbed my pack, checked my GPS unit, and radioed for backup. My partner that day was supposed to be Jake Morrison, but he'd called in sick that morning with what he said was food poisoning. So I got Angela Reyes, who'd only been with the service for 8 months. Angela was 26, former paramedic, smart and capable, but new to the mountain. She didn't know about the protocols yet, the unwritten ones. We started up the Hotlambolam route at 3:30 p.m., giving us about 4 hours of daylight. The weather was perfect, clear skies, temperature around 65 degrees at the trailhead, light wind, perfect summit conditions, which meant there was no obvious reason for the group to be delayed. Angela and I made good time, both of us in excellent shape, both familiar with the terrain. We radioed our position every 30 minutes. At 5:15 p.m., we reached 8,200 feet. At 6:45 p.m., we hit 9,200 feet. The sun was getting low, painting the mountain in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, deceptive. At 9,500 feet, my GPS started acting strangely. The coordinates flickered, showing our position accurately one moment, then placing us somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean the next. I'd seen this before, a few times over the years. Equipment malfunction, I told myself. Magnetic interference from the volcanic rock. I had backup navigation, compass, and map. Years of experience on this mountain. We continued upward. David, do you feel that? Angela asked. We'd stopped to catch our breath and scan the terrain above us with binoculars. The light was fading fast now, the temperature dropping. It should have been around 45 degrees at this elevation. My thermometer read 38 degrees. But that's not what felt wrong. The air had a quality to it, a thickness, like the pressure change you feel before a thunderstorm, except there were no clouds. The sky was crystalline clear, stars beginning to emerge. Feel what? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. I'd felt it too, a tingling sensation across my skin, a low vibration that seemed to come from inside my chest rather than from any external source. Like the air is buzzing, she said, like there's static electricity everywhere. I checked my radio. Static. Just a wall of white noise. I tried different frequencies. All static. I pulled out my cell phone, already knowing what I'd see. No signal, which was normal at this elevation. But the phone itself was behaving oddly. The screen flickered, showing the time as 6:52 p.m., then 3:33 a.m., then 11:07 p.m., then back to 6:52 p.m. I turned it off and back on. Same thing. We should mark this position and continue, I said, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. I pulled out my compass to take a bearing. The needle spun slowly in a complete circle, then another, then stopped pointing northwest, which would have put magnetic north somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I tapped the compass housing. The needle didn't move. I pulled out my backup compass. Same behavior. This was when I should have turned back. This was when protocol said to retreat, call for additional resources, wait for daylight. But 4 people were up there somewhere, possibly injured, possibly hypothermic. And I had 17 years of experience on this mountain. I knew every trail, every feature, every hazard, or I thought I did. We continued upward as twilight deepened into night. I switched on my headlamp. Angela did the same. The beams of light seemed to behave strangely, not penetrating as far as they should. The illumination seeming to bend around unseen obstacles. We were climbing through a boulder field now. The massive stones deposited here thousands of years ago by glacial retreat. I knew this area. I'd been through it dozens of times. But something was different. The rocks seemed larger than I remembered. The spacing between them wrong. At 10,000 feet, we found the first sign of the missing group, a blue stuff sack, the kind used for sleeping bags, wedged between two boulders. I recognized it from the gear list they'd submitted with their permit. Angela pulled it free, empty. No damage, no blood, no obvious reason for it to be abandoned here. I took a photo with my camera. The flash seemed too bright, leaving after images in my vision that lasted longer than they should. "Marcus, Jennifer, Paul, Sarah," I shouted into the darkness. My voice sounded flat, absorbed by the air itself, traveling no distance at all. Angela called out as well. Nothing, not even an echo, which was wrong. This terrain should produce echoes. We pressed on. At 10,200 feet, my thermometer read 34 degrees, but I was sweating inside my jacket. The air felt warm, almost tropical, completely at odds with what the instrument said. I took off my gloves. My hands felt hot. I could see my breath in the beam of my headlamp, great plumes of condensation, but my skin felt like I was standing in desert sun. "David, look at this," Angela said. She was kneeling beside a flat boulder, shining her light on something scratched into the rock surface. I moved closer. Someone had carved words into the stone, rough letters about 2 inches high. The rock here was andesite, volcanic stone, hard enough that carving into it would require significant time and effort, or a very hard tool. The words said, "The mountain remembers everything." "Fresh," Angela said, running her finger along the carved letters. "This wasn't weathered. Someone did this recently." But that didn't make sense. I'd been past this exact boulder 3 weeks ago during a routine patrol. It hadn't been there. I was certain of it. I photographed the carving. In the camera's LCD screen, the letters seemed to shift and writhe like living things. I blinked hard. When I looked again, they were static, just carved words in stone. We found the second sign at 10,400 feet. A tent, fully erected, guy lines properly secured, stakes driven into the rocky ground. One of the Portland group's tents. I recognized the brand from their permit. The tent was zipped shut. No damage visible, no signs of struggle. But it was empty. Sleeping bags laid out neatly inside, personal items arranged carefully, headlamps hanging from the tent ceiling loops. A small camp stove sat in the vestibule, unused. I checked the fuel canister. Full. "They set up camp and then left?" Angela asked. "Why would they do that?" I didn't have an answer. I radioed our position, knowing it was futile. Static. Just static. I tried my satellite phone, the one we carry for emergencies when radio fails. It powered on, but the screen showed impossible coordinates. 34.5 degrees north, 178.2 degrees west. That would put us somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from California. I tried to send a distress signal anyway. The phone emitted a high-pitched tone that made my teeth ache, then shut off completely. It wouldn't turn back on. We searched the area around the tent in expanding circles. At the edge of my headlamp beam, I saw something that made me stop. Footprints, dozens of them, leading upward toward the glacier. But these weren't normal footprints in dirt or snow. These were scorched into the rock itself, black marks on gray stone, the perfect impression of boot treads, burned or melted into solid andesite. I knelt beside one. The stone was warm to the touch, not hot, but noticeably warmer than the surrounding rock. "How is this possible?" Angela whispered. She was looking at her own discovery. A watch, stopped at 3:33 a.m. The crystal face fractured into a perfect spiral pattern. not random cracks from impact. A deliberate, mathematical spiral. The watch band was still clasped, as if it had simply phased through someone's wrist. The footprints led upward. We followed them. Every 100 feet or so, we found another item. A water bottle, still full. A map, marked with a route that didn't match any actual trail on the mountain. A granola bar wrapper, but when I picked it up, it was heavy, far heavier than it should be, as if made from lead instead of plastic. A carabiner that was simultaneously hot and cold to the touch. The metal cycling between temperatures so quickly I could feel both sensations at once. At 10,800 feet, the footprints stopped. Not gradually, not fading away. They simply ended mid-stride, as if the person making them had been plucked from the earth in the middle of a step. Beyond this point, there was nothing. No tracks, no signs, no disturbance of any kind. Just empty volcanic rock, and 100 yards ahead, the dirty white expanse of the Hotlum Glacier glowing in our headlamps. "We need to go back," Angela said. Her voice was tight with fear she was trying to control. "Something's wrong here. Something's really wrong." She was right. I knew she was right. But I was thinking about Marcus Keller and Jennifer Ross and Paul Chen and Sarah Whitmore, thinking about them possibly injured or lost or hypothermic somewhere up there in the darkness. And I was thinking about something else too, something I hadn't told Angela. I was thinking about the green journal I'd found in Thomas Webb's old locker 8 months ago when I'd been cleaning out storage. Thomas Webb, the ranger who'd worked this area before me, who disappeared in August of 1998 while conducting a solo patrol above 10,000 feet. They'd searched for 2 weeks, found nothing, not a trace, declared him lost in a climbing accident, though no body was ever recovered. But I'd found his journal, 147 pages of handwritten notes, documenting something he'd called the Convergence. Dates and times when he'd experienced anomalies on the mountain, compass failures, GPS errors, time distortions, people who'd seen things that shouldn't exist, and notes about the Wintu people, the indigenous inhabitants of this region, and their oral histories about Mount Shasta, about how it wasn't just a mountain, about how it was a threshold. I hadn't believed it. I'd thought Thomas had gone crazy, that the isolation and altitude had affected his judgment. I'd filed the journal away in my own locker and tried to forget about it. But now, standing at 10,800 feet, with burned footprints ending in mid-stride and my equipment failing in ways that made no sense, I was remembering every word. "Just a little further," I said to Angela, "to the glacier edge. If they're not there, we turn back, get reinforcements at first light." We climbed. The slope steepened. The air grew thinner. My altimeter read 11,000 feet, but my lungs felt like I was at 14,000. Every breath was labor, but my body felt strong, energized, like I'd downed a dozen energy drinks. My heart was racing, but not from exertion. From something else. From proximity. The edge of the Hotlum Glacier appeared in our lights. The ice here was old, dirty with volcanic ash and rock debris, crevassed and broken. During summer melt, this area was constantly shifting, dangerous, unstable. But it was late September. The ice should have been solid, locked down for the approaching winter. Instead, I could hear it groaning and cracking, sounds like distant thunder, like the mountain itself was breathing. And then I saw them, not the missing hikers, something else. At first, I thought it was an ice formation, a serac or pressure ridge catching the light strangely. But as we got closer, I realized it was people, multiple people, standing in a rough circle on the glacier surface. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, facing inward toward a point at the circle's center. "Marcus? Jennifer?" I called out. My voice still sounded wrong, still absorbed by the air before it could travel. The figures didn't respond, didn't turn. We approached carefully, watching for crevasses, testing each step. At 50 feet away, I could see details. They were wearing climbing gear, modern gear, but also not modern. I saw a mix of styles, equipment from different eras. One figure wore a bright red jacket, the kind of synthetic technical gear from the last decade. Another wore what looked like wool, the kind of climbing clothes from the 1970s or earlier. Another was dressed in something older, heavy canvas, the kind of expedition gear from the early 1900s. At 20 feet, I stopped, because I could see their faces now, and they weren't right, not disfigured, not injured, just wrong. The proportions were off by fractions, like looking at a photograph that had been stretched or compressed in one direction. Their eyes were open, but didn't reflect our lights the way human eyes should. And they were all facing inward, looking down at the center of their circle. I stepped closer. Angela grabbed my arm. "David, don't." But I had to see. I had to know what they were looking at. I moved to the edge of the circle, careful not to get too close to any of the figures. I looked down at what held their attention. A hole in the ice, not a crevasse, not a melt hole. A perfect circle, about 8 feet in diameter, cut through the glacier as if with a laser. The edges were smooth, glass-like, and the hole didn't go down into darkness. It went down into light. Blue-green light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. I could feel warmth rising from it. That tropical warmth I'd been feeling despite the thermometer readings. And I could hear something. Not sound exactly. More like the memory of sound. Music that had been played long ago and had somehow left echoes in the fabric of reality itself. "David," Angela said, her voice barely audible. "David, they're breathing." I looked at the figures around the circle. She was right. Their chests were rising and falling, slowly, in perfect synchronization. All of them breathing at the same rate, in and out, in and out. But they still weren't moving otherwise, weren't acknowledging us, weren't responding. I pulled out my camera. I don't know why. Professional documentation, maybe? Evidence? Proof? I raised it and took a photo. The flash fired. And in that instant of illumination, I saw something that made my heart stop. The figure nearest to me, the one in the red jacket, turned its head. Not quickly. Slowly. Smoothly. With mechanical precision. It looked directly at me, and I recognized the face. Marcus Keller. From the driver's license photo attached to his wilderness permit. But also not Marcus Keller. The features were his, but arranged wrong, like someone had been given a description of a human face and had assembled it from memory, getting all the parts right, but missing something essential, something indefinable. His mouth opened. He spoke. But the voice came from multiple directions at once, from the air itself, not from his throat. And it wasn't one voice, but many voices harmonizing, speaking the same words simultaneously. "Time isn't a line, David. Time is a web. You're standing at the spider's center now." I stumbled backward. My heel hit ice. I started to slip. Angela caught me. We backed away from the circle, from the figures, from the hole with its impossible light. The Marcus thing kept watching me, its head rotated further than a human head should rotate, tracking my movement. The other figures began to move too, all turning in unison, all looking at us now with those wrong eyes. The mountain remembers everything, they said in perfect unison, dozens of voices as one. The missing hours are never really missing. Welcome to the Convergence. We ran. Not a tactical retreat. Not a measured withdrawal. Pure panic flight back down the mountain, scrambling over boulders, slipping on scree, our headlamps bouncing wildly, creating manic shadows that seemed to chase us. Behind us, I could hear laughter. Not human laughter. Something that approximated laughter the way a synthesizer approximates a violin, getting the notes right, but missing the soul. We didn't stop until we reached 9,000 feet. The moment we crossed that invisible boundary, everything changed. My GPS flickered and locked onto accurate coordinates. My radio crackled to life with normal chatter from the ranger station. The temperature felt normal again, cold at this elevation, appropriate. My compass needle swung to point north, actual magnetic north. My phone showed the correct time, 11:47 p.m. Angela was shaking, her breath coming in gasps that had nothing to do with exertion. What was that? What the fuck was that, David? I didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense. Not one she would believe. So I lied. Altitude sickness, I said. Hypoxia. We both experienced it. The mind plays tricks above 10,000 feet, you know that. She stared at me. Bullshit. You saw what I saw. Those people. That light. That hole in the ice. We'll come back at dawn with a full team, I said. Proper equipment. We'll find the missing hikers. Everything will make sense in daylight. But I knew it wouldn't. I knew what we'd find. Nothing. Just like they'd found nothing when they'd searched for Thomas Webb. Just like they'd found nothing when they'd searched for the disappeared in 1953, or in 1978, or in 1992, or in any of the dozens of incidents documented in Thomas Webb's Green Journal. We descended the rest of the way in silence, reaching the trailhead at 2:15 a.m. I filed a preliminary report, kept it vague. Searched to 11,000 feet, no sign of missing party, experienced equipment malfunctions, will resume at dawn with additional personnel. The night supervisor, Greg Martinez, read it and nodded. Sector 7, he asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. Greg had been with the Park Service for 23 years. He'd worked this mountain longer than I had. Yeah, I said. He nodded again. I'll make the call. He didn't specify to whom. I didn't ask. At dawn, we went back up with a team of 8 rangers and 2 SAR specialists borrowed from Siskiyou County. We searched for 3 days. We found the tent, exactly where Angela and I had found it. We found the scattered gear. We found the watch with its spiral fractured face. We did not find any footprints burned into stone. We did not find a hole in the glacier. We did not find the circle of figures. We did not find Marcus Keller, Jennifer Ross, Paul Chen, or Sarah Whitmore. On the 4th day, 2 men in unmarked vehicles arrived at the ranger station. They showed identification from the Department of Homeland Security, Anomalous Events Division. I'd never heard of such a division. They interviewed Angela and me separately. They were particularly interested in the hole in the ice, the light, the voices. They asked the same questions multiple ways, trying to catch inconsistencies. When they were done, they had us sign forms, non-disclosure agreements. Violations would result in federal prosecution. They assured us the missing hikers would be found. They assured us this was a matter of national security. They assured us our careers would continue normally if we complied. Angela transferred to Yosemite 2 weeks later. She doesn't return my calls. I stayed because I had to understand. I went back to Thomas Webb's journal, read it cover to cover 3 times. Then I started doing my own research. The Mount Shasta Trinity National Forest headquarters has an archive, old records dating back to when the forest was first established in 1905. I spent weeks going through brittle paper files, yellowed reports, forgotten documents. I found a pattern. Every September 22nd, going back over a century, there were incidents, missing hikers, equipment failures, strange sightings. Not every year, but often enough to establish a clear pattern. September 22nd, the autumn equinox, or close to it. A threshold moment between seasons, between light and dark. And not just September 22nd, also March 21st, the spring equinox. And June 21st and December 21st, the solstices. 4 times a year, the convergence became active. 4 times a year, the mountain remembered, I found references to earlier incidents. A USGS geological survey team in 1953 that lost 14 members above 10,000 feet. Only 3 survivors, all of whom described similar phenomena to what Angela and I experienced. Their reports were classified. A climbing expedition in 1938 that simply vanished. All 7 members. A group of miners in 1897 who went up looking for gold and came back changed, speaking in unison, their eyes wrong. They were confined to an asylum in Sacramento, where they died within a month. Their bodies showing no signs of disease or trauma. They just stopped, like machines powering down. I found military records too. In 1954, the year after the USGS incident, the Air Force established a monitoring station at 8,500 feet on Mount Shasta. Officially, it was for atmospheric research. But the classified reports I found buried in misfiled documents told a different story. They were monitoring the convergence. They detected readings they described as temporal anomalies and dimensional breaches. The station operated for 11 years before being shuttered in 1965. All the data was sealed under the Atomic Energy Act, the same classification level used for nuclear weapons research. And I found references to the Wintu people, the indigenous inhabitants of this region before European contact. Their oral histories spoke of Mount Shasta as Bulium Puyok, the Great Spirit Mountain. But it wasn't a place of worship. It was a place of warning. Their traditions said the mountain was a doorway, a thin place where the world of humans met other worlds. They had protocols for approaching it, offerings, prayers, and absolute prohibitions against going above the tree line during the equinoxes and solstices. They knew. They'd always known. I reached out to the Wintu Cultural Preservation Society. I met with an elder named Raymond Coyote, a man in his 80s with deep-set eyes and hands scarred from a lifetime of hard work. I told him I was researching local folklore for an educational program. I didn't mention what I'd seen, not at first. Raymond listened patiently, then smiled a sad smile. "You've been up there during the convergence times, haven't you, Ranger?" I didn't answer. He continued anyway. "My grandfather told me stories his grandfather told him. The mountain is old, older than the ice, older than the trees, older than the people. It was here before, and it will be here after. Most of the time, it's just a mountain. Rock and ice and wind. But 4 times a year, at the balance points, it remembers what it really is. A door. A crossing place. Between now and then. between here and there, between what is and what might be. What happens to the people who go through? I asked. Raymond's expression turned grave. They don't go through, Ranger. They become part of the threshold itself. The door needs hinges. It needs frame. It needs structure. Every doorway is made of material. This one is made of moments, made of people who stood in the wrong place at the wrong time and became architecture instead of visitors. Can they be saved? Saved from what? They're not dead. They're not suffering. They exist in all moments simultaneously now. Past, present, future, all at once. They see everything, experience everything. From their perspective, they've been standing there for seconds and for millennia. Linear time is an illusion we created to make sense of existence. They've moved beyond the illusion. Would you call that saved or lost? I thought about Marcus Keller and the others, standing in their circle, breathing in unison, looking down into that light. They didn't choose it. No, Raymond agreed. They didn't. That's why we had the warnings. That's why we marked the boundaries. That's why we never went up during the balance times. But your people didn't listen to our warnings. Your people thought our knowledge was superstition. So the mountain teaches its own lessons now. How do we stop it? Raymond laughed, but there was no humor in it. Stop it? Ranger, you're asking how to stop a mountain from being what it is. You might as well ask how to stop the sun from rising. The mountain doesn't choose to be a doorway any more than you choose to be human. It simply is. The only choice is whether to respect it or to learn why the warnings existed. I left that meeting with more questions than answers, but I kept researching. I kept documenting, and I kept watching the calendar. December 21st was approaching. The winter solstice. 3 months after the September incident. I knew something would happen. I could feel it the way animals feel earthquakes before they strike. On December 20th, 3 university students filed a wilderness permit for a winter climbing attempt. They wanted to summit via the Hotlambolam route, camping at 10,200 feet. I tried to dissuade them. I explained the route was dangerous in winter, that avalanche risk was high, that they should consider the southern routes instead. They were polite but insistent, experienced winter climbers, proper gear, valid permit. I couldn't legally deny them access. I watched them hike out on the morning of December 21st. I watched them disappear up the trail, and I knew I would never see them again. Not as they were. I filed a request for personal time and told my supervisor I needed to visit family. Instead, I spent the solstice night parked at a pullout with a view of the upper mountain. I watched through high-powered binoculars. At 3:33 a.m., I saw lights on the mountain, not headlamps. The blue-green light I'd seen in September, now visible from miles away, pulsing like a beacon. It lasted 17 minutes. Then it faded. When the sun rose, the mountain looked normal again. Just snow and rock and ice. We found the students' tent 5 days later at 10,300 feet. Empty. Gear neatly arranged. No signs of distress. We searched for 2 weeks. The Department of Homeland Security sent their agents, again. More NDAs. More assurances. More lies about ongoing investigations and classified operations. I went back to Raymond Coyote in February. I told him everything this time. What I'd seen in September. What I'd witnessed in December. The journal. The historical records. All of it. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "You want to understand. That's why you're here." But understanding isn't enough for you, is it? You want to do something. People are dying. People are changing, he corrected, and they would keep changing whether you intervened or not. The mountain has been doing this since long before humans walked these lands. It will continue long after we're gone. Then what do I do? Raymond studied me with those deep-set eyes. You've already made your choice, Ranger. You keep going back. You keep watching. You're drawn to it now, aren't you? Feel it pulling you? He was right. I did feel it. A magnetic pull, strongest during the quarter days, the equinoxes and solstices, but present always now. A low vibration in my chest, a whisper at the edge of hearing, the mountain calling. That's how it begins, Raymond said. First you witness, then you're marked, then you become part of the cycle. How many times have you been above 9,500 feet since September? I thought about it. Dozens of times. Patrols, training exercises, maintenance work. Every excuse I could find to go up there, to feel that pull, to stand at the boundary and look up toward the convergence. You're becoming a threshold guardian, Raymond said, neither fully in the human world nor in the other. You'll spend your life walking the boundary, keeping watch. Some of your people do this voluntarily. My people used to do it as a sacred duty. We had guardians who would live at the tree line, who would perform the ceremonies needed to maintain the balance. But your government doesn't believe in such things. So the mountain creates its own guardians now, takes them from those who get too close, who see too much, who can't turn away. I don't want to become like those things I saw in the circle. You won't. Not completely. You saw the final stage, the full transformation. But there are steps between. You're on the first step now, the awareness. Next comes the mark, physical evidence of your connection. Then comes the duty. You'll find yourself unable to leave, compelled to watch, to warn, to maintain the boundary. And finally, if you serve long enough, you have a choice. Remain human and die as humans do, or step through and become structure, become eternal, become part of the door itself. Thomas Webb, I said. The ranger before me, he disappeared in 1998. Raymond nodded. I knew Thomas. Good man. Tried to fight it at first, then accepted it. He made his choice in the end. Stepped through during the autumn equinox of that year. He's still there, in his way. Part of the circle now. Part of the architecture. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with temperature. You're saying he's one of those figures? Was. Is. Will be. Those distinctions don't apply anymore. He exists in the eternal moment now, experiencing all time simultaneously. From his perspective, he's been there for seconds and for centuries. He's watching us have this conversation right now, and he's watching conversations that won't happen for decades. Time is a web, Ranger, not a line. I left Raymond's house feeling more lost than ever, but I also felt a strange clarity. I understood now why I couldn't stop going back to the mountain, why I couldn't transfer away like Angela had, why I lay awake at night thinking about the convergence, about the light, about the voices speaking in unison. I was already marked, already caught in the web. March 21st came, the spring equinox. 2 hikers went missing above 10,000 feet. We found their campsite. We found their gear. We didn't find them. The DHS agents came. More paperwork. More silence. It was after this incident that I noticed the mark. I was in the shower, soaping my chest, when I felt it. A patch of skin that felt different. Colder. I looked down. There, over my heart, was a handprint. Not a bruise, not a tattoo. The skin itself had changed color, turned a pale blue-gray, the exact shade of glacial ice. The print was perfect, every line and whorl of someone's palm visible. I touched it. It was cold, noticeably colder than the surrounding skin, and it was spreading. I could see the edges expanding slowly, a millimeter a day maybe, creeping outward across my chest. I showed it to a doctor, claimed I'd burned myself on ice during a rescue. He looked confused. "This isn't frostbite," he said. "The skin isn't damaged. It's just different, changed somehow. I've never seen anything like it." He wanted to run tests. I declined. I knew what it was. The mark Raymond had mentioned. Physical evidence of my connection to the convergence. Proof that I was becoming something other than fully human. June 21st. Summer solstice. 3 more missing above 10,000 feet. Same pattern, same outcome. Same handprint appearing on my body, this time on my left shoulder blade. Same cold, spreading mark. I started having dreams. Not nightmares. Something stranger. I would dream I was standing on the glacier, looking down into that hole of blue-green light. And I would see things. Scenes playing out in the light like movies on a screen. But not linear movies. All the scenes happening simultaneously, overlapping. The past and present and future bleeding together. I saw the Wintu people of 1,000 years ago performing ceremonies at the tree line. I saw Spanish explorers in the 1700s staring up at the mountain in awe and terror. I saw the miners of 1897 stepping into the light and emerging changed. I saw the USGS team of 1953, saw the moment they encountered the convergence, saw their bodies beginning the transformation. I saw Thomas Webb making his choice in 1998, saw him step into the circle and become eternal. I saw myself, standing where I stand now, typing these words. I saw myself in years to come, my body mostly covered in the blue-gray mark, still on patrol, still watching, still unable to leave. And I saw myself making the choice, decades from now, or tomorrow, or 100 years ago, stepping through and joining the circle, becoming threshold instead of guardian. Time isn't a line. It's a web. And I'm caught in it now. I started documenting everything in a journal of my own, following Thomas Webb's example. Every incident, every anomaly, every time my equipment failed above 9,500 feet, every time I felt the pull, stronger during the quarter days, but present always. I documented the spread of the marks on my body. 4 now, 1 for each time the convergence activated since I'd witnessed it in September. 4 handprints in blue-gray skin, cold to the touch, spreading slowly across my body like ice claiming a pond. I researched other locations. Mount Shasta isn't unique. There are thin places all over the world, spots where the boundary between what is and what might be grows permeable during certain times. The Bermuda Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle, Skinwalker Ranch, the Alaska Triangle, the North Yungas Road, Superstition Mountains, the Devil's Sea. All of them show similar patterns: disappearances during specific times, technology failures, reality distortions, and all of them have indigenous warnings, ancient prohibitions, old knowledge that modern people dismissed as superstition. I found military documents about a project called Operation Nukem from 1953, the same year as the USGS incident on Mount Shasta. The Air Force had been studying these locations, trying to understand them, trying to weaponize them. They'd lost 147 personnel across various sites before the project was shut down and sealed under national security classifications. 147. The same number of pages in Thomas Webb's journal. the same number that kept appearing in my own documentation. Coincidence? Or was even the number itself part of the pattern, part of the web? September 22nd came around again. 1 year since my first encounter with the Convergence. I took personal time, told my supervisor I needed a break. Instead, I hiked up to 10,500 feet and waited. I wanted to see it again, needed to see it. The pull was overwhelming now, a physical ache in my chest. At 3:33 a.m., it began. The air took on that thick, electric quality. My equipment failed in the familiar ways. And there, 100 yards ahead on the glacier, the hole opened. Not suddenly. It was more like it had always been there, and I was only now able to perceive it. The blue-green light pulsed upward, like a searchlight into the night sky. The circle of figures stood around it, more of them now than I'd seen the year before. I counted 23 people, 23 different eras of clothing, 23 faces that were almost, but not quite human. I walked toward them. I couldn't help myself. Every rational part of my brain was screaming to run, to get below 9,500 feet where reality was solid and reliable. But the pull was too strong. I approached the circle. The figures turned to watch me, moving in perfect synchronization. I recognized Thomas Webb among them now, his Ranger uniform from the 1990s. His face, arranged wrong but recognizable. He smiled at me. They all smiled at me, and spoke in unison, their voices coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You're early, David. It's not your time yet. You have years of watching left to do, but you're on the path. You feel it, don't you? The inevitability, the gravity, the pull toward transformation." I tried to speak. My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. "What are you?" "We are the threshold. We are the door. We are the moment between moments, the space between spaces. We are what happens when consciousness steps outside the illusion of linear time and experiences existence as it truly is, eternal, simultaneous, infinite. Are you suffering?" They laughed, that synthesized approximation of laughter. Suffering requires time, before and after, pain and relief. We exist in all moments at once. We are experiencing this conversation and all conversations that have ever occurred and will ever occur. We are suffering and ecstatic and bored and fascinated and every emotion simultaneously. We are more and less than we were. We are transformed, not destroyed. "The people who come here," I said, "they don't choose this. Choice is illusion. Causality is illusion. They were always going to stand here. We were always going to stand here. You are always going to stand here. The web is already woven. We're just following the pattern." I don't accept that. I don't believe in predestination. "Belief is irrelevant," they said, their voices harmonizing in ways that made my head ache. "You'll understand when you join us, when you step through and become, when the marks have spread far enough, when the pull becomes irresistible, could be years, could be decades, could be tomorrow. Time is negotiable when you're standing at the threshold." I backed away. The figures watched me go with their wrong eyes, still smiling. I stumbled down the mountain, my legs shaking, my heart pounding. I didn't stop until I was below 9,000 feet. Back in the world where physics worked normally, and time flowed in one direction, and people were just people. That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, I've been trying to decide what to do. I could leave, request a transfer, get as far from Mount Shasta as possible. But Raymond Coyote's words haunt me. "You're becoming a threshold guardian. I feel the truth of it. When I think about leaving, about abandoning this mountain, I feel physical pain, like tearing muscle from bone. The thought of not being here during the next convergence is unbearable. I'm bound to this place now, as surely as if I were chained to the summit. The marks continue to spread. 5 handprints now, across my chest, my back, my shoulders. The blue-gray skin is cold always, never warming, never feeling quite real. I avoid situations where I'd have to undress in front of others. I make excuses. I live alone. No close relationships. No intimacy. Just me and the mountain and the pull and the waiting. I've started to see things even when I'm not near the convergence. Glimpses of other times, other possibilities, like after images at the edge of my vision. I'll be driving and for a moment see the road as it was in the 1950s. See vintage cars passing by. I'll be in the Ranger station and glimpse it as it will be in 50 years, abandoned and overgrown. I'll look at my hands and see them as they are, and as they will be, marked completely in blue-gray, more ice than flesh. Time is becoming negotiable for me too. The web is pulling me in. I know how this ends. I've seen it in the dreams that aren't quite dreams. I'll serve for years, maybe decades, walking the boundary, warning people away during the convergence times, documenting the incidents. The marks will spread until my entire body is changed. And one day, probably during a convergence, probably during an equinox or solstice, I'll make the choice Thomas Webb made. I'll step into the circle. I'll look down into that blue-green light, and I'll become threshold instead of guardian. I'll exist in all moments simultaneously, experiencing everything that has happened and will happen on this mountain. I'll stand there with Thomas and the others, breathing in unison, watching all of time unfold like a tapestry. Part of me is terrified. Part of me is curious. And part of me, the part that's already more threshold than human, is eager. Because from where they stand, from where I'll stand, reality looks different. Time looks different. Existence itself looks different. And maybe, just maybe, the transformation isn't tragedy. Maybe it's evolution. Maybe it's the next step for consciousness that's ready to move beyond the illusion of linear causality. But I'm not there yet. I still have watching to do. Still have people to warn, even though most won't listen. Still have incidents to document. Still have this journal to maintain, following Thomas Webb's example, leaving a record for whoever comes after me. Because someone will come after me. Someone always does. The mountain needs guardians, and it finds them among those who get too close, who see too much, who can't look away. So I'm recording this video. I'm uploading it to the internet, where it can't be completely suppressed, even though I know the DHS will try. I'm breaking my NDA, which will end my career and possibly result in prosecution. But people need to know. People planning to visit Mount Shasta need to understand what they're approaching. This isn't just a mountain. It's a doorway, a thin place, a convergence point between our reality and something else. If you're planning to climb Mount Shasta, avoid the northeast face between 9,500 and 11,200 feet. Especially avoid it during the equinoxes and solstices. March 21st, June 21st, September 22nd, December 21st. If you must go up, turn back if your equipment starts failing. If your GPS shows impossible coordinates. If your compass won't find north. If the air feels electric. If you see lights that aren't headlamps. If you hear voices that come from everywhere and nowhere. These are warnings. The mountain is becoming what it truly is. The threshold is opening, and you don't want to be there when it does. Not unless you're ready to stop being entirely human. I'll keep watching for as long as I can. Keep trying to warn people away during the dangerous times. Keep documenting the incidents. Keep fighting the pull, even though I know fighting is futile. The web is already woven. I'm already caught. My transformation has already begun. To my fellow rangers, to the people who work these mountains, if you find my journal, read it. Learn from it. Understand that the old knowledge was correct. The indigenous warnings were accurate. There are thin places in the world, boundaries between what is and what might be. Respect them, honor them, maintain them. That's our duty now. We're the guardians, whether we chose it or not. To the families of those who've disappeared on Mount Shasta, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't bring your loved ones back. I'm sorry I can't explain what happened to them in a way that makes sense. All I can tell you is they're not dead. Not exactly. They've been transformed. They exist in a state we don't have words for, experiencing time and space in ways we can't comprehend. They're part of the threshold now, part of the mountain's architecture, and in their own way, they're eternal. To whoever becomes the next guardian after I'm gone, I'm sorry. The burden is heavy. The isolation is complete. The transformation is inevitable. But there's also beauty in it, in a terrible way. You'll see things no human should see. You'll understand truths that break the mind, but you'll also serve a purpose. You'll stand at the boundary and keep watch. You'll warn the unprepared. You'll document the mystery. It's a calling as old as humanity itself, this guardian duty. Honor it. The marks are spreading as I record this. I can feel them now, cold patches growing across my ribs, my abdomen, my arms. By this time next year, I'll be more threshold than human. By the year after, I might not be able to make videos like this anymore. By the third year, I might not be able to resist the pull during a convergence. The transformation is accelerating. The web is tightening. December 21st is coming again, the winter solstice. I feel it approaching like a physical force. The pull is stronger than ever. I dream about the light every night now, about stepping into it, about letting go of linear time and expanding into eternity. Part of me wants to resist. Part of me knows resistance is pointless. Time isn't a line. It's a web. And I've been caught in it since the moment I saw the convergence for the first time. Maybe I was always caught in it. Maybe I was always going to be a threshold guardian. Maybe this video was always going to be recorded. Maybe you were always going to watch it. Causality is negotiable when you're standing at the intersection of all possible moments. If you take nothing else from this, remember this. Mount Shasta remembers everything. The mountain is a doorway. The old warnings were correct. And time isn't what you think it is. Welcome to the Convergence.